Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to talk about the newest character, Krishna. I will do a bit of a deep dive into his skills, give a bit of my opinion on how useful he is, and also towards the end, I will talk about some formation ideas with Krishna, and also whether you should invest in this character or not. Now, because he's already in the game, there's all of the skills. You can go to the Knight Handbook to all see all of his skills and his close ability. So for this reason, I wouldn't actually just read them out. You can just read it in your own time. I would, however, pull up his constellation and post it on the left-hand side of the video. This is not something you may be able to see directly straight away. So it'd be useful to have this context. Now let's talk about his ultimate skills. His ultimate skill have a bit of a unique mechanics. So normally Cosmo requires you require 8,000 Cosmo to release an ultimate, which is still the requirement for Krishna. But what happens here is that Krishna will use 2,000 of those customers just to start off this ultimate and create this a bit of like spiritual union, what is called in game. So that basically means Krishna will have 6,000 customers left, and then you'll be consumed at a rate of 800 per zero point 0.5 second. So this basically allows Krishna to put up this spiritual unit for roughly 4 seconds. And during those 4 seconds, he would be able to buff himself and also the two allies behind him. So because he will be buffing his allies behind him, you definitely want to put Krishna up front. So use him as more of a defensive protector knight rather than a damage dealer. Spiritual Union have this bit of a cool mechanics of repelling the enemy. So this definitely don't get us confused with compulsory interruption. This is not compulsory interruption. What this means is that for certain skills such as Marine has this ability to kind of jump over your knights to attack the backline. With this kind of repel ability, you just kind of force them back to their starting position. So it's a bit of a useful and a bit of cheeky mechanics. Um, it's not the best control effect. However, it can be useful for certain situations against certain lions. Um, Next, we have Golden Lance. This one, the main two things to know here. First one is that it deals damage equal to 15% of the target's maximum HP. Now, remember what I said earlier, you want to put Krishna up front in your first row. This basically means he will very likely to be attacking against the enemy's front row. Enemy front rows tend to be protector knights, etc. So 15% of the target's maximum HP is actually pretty good because normally protector knights have good defense, so it would be quite hard to deal damage to them. So this kind of base 15% based on HP is pretty good. Another thing to note for Golden Lance is at level 3 it breaks all the shields. So this is very useful against characters such as Misty, who will be able to put up shields to recover, to both boost the defense but also recover HP. So Krishna completely counters characters such as Misty because he will be able to break the shield that Misty will be able to pull up. There's one exception here. Well, not exception, but one character to note here will be Sirius. Because when Sirius' shield is broken, he will actually stun the opponents. So it's a bit tricky when you have Krishna up against Sirius because if you actually break Sirius' shield, he will stun off your knights, and that may not be the best situation for you. So you potentially have to be a bit careful when up against Sirius and decide whether you want to bring Krishna to break his shield. Lance stuns, okay skill. There's nothing too much to really call out for, so I wouldn't talk too much about this. It's just kind of a bit of controllability where he's able to stun the enemy for 3 seconds. Then we move on to Kudadini, which is by far the best skill for Krishna. What Kudadini does is provides all of your allies at the start of the game with a shield equal to 30% of HP. 30% of HP doesn't sound like a lot, and also it's only for 6 seconds. However, this can be very game changing depending on the situation. Because a lot of times, especially in maps, you will notice that your knights will get wiped out completely in the first few seconds of the map of the battle because the enemy is so much higher level than you, and often you want to release your ultimate in order to have a chance of changing that game. However, your knights are just way too squishy to be able to actually release their ultimate and try to inflict enough damage. However, with Krishna's Kudadini, effectively this will give you a much higher chance of being able to last long enough in the battle to actually release your first ultimate. And for this reason, it can a lot of time change the tides of the battle. So imagine the likes of Sagittarius, who's probably, in my opinion, the best pairing with Krishna. Sagittarius is quite fragile, so can be wiped out pretty easily, especially considering he's also one of those more rare characters, so it's harder for you to get a high star rating for him. So he normally lags a bit behind in terms of star rating and makes him a lot more fragile. Now, should you have Kudadini to protect Sagittarius, this will allow Sagittarius to be able to fire off his first ultimate. And if that managed to kill off the enemy, Sagittarius skill then allow him to recharge Cosmo immediately and then makes him ready to fire off against the second enemy and the third enemy and so on, etc. And you're able to pick off the enemy knights one by one. So for this reason, you kind of really want Kudadini to be on the field for you to try to make sure your Sagittarius is able to last long enough in the battle to release the first ultimate. So in my eyes, Kudadini by far the best skill for Krishna and can a lot of time change the outcome of the battle. So definitely worth noting here. In terms of his clothes, they are pretty good. Um, and also, I would say that you don't need to invest too much into his clothes. Um, f- for level 10, basically, what you're able to do is to increase the affected allies' attack and defense using your ultimate. So, that to me is super important. And that's probably the level I would recommend you to level up to. Level 20 is still good because what you're saying is that kind of you're gaining Cosmo and also recover HP whenever enemy is defeated. However, for this kind of skill, I always have this perception that when an enemy is defeated, that means kind of means you are kind of ahead in the battle already. So you don't really need that much extra defensive boost. For Krishna, it's slightly different because 800 Cosmo does mean that his ultimate will be able to last 0.5 seconds longer and therefore buff your own knights for 0.5 seconds longer. But still, I always kind of feel like whenever an enemy is defeated, you're kind of already ahead in the game. You don't really need this kind of additional buff to make you win by even larger margin. I always prefer skills that is able to turn the tide of a battle rather than for you to make to win a battle more comfortably. So in my eyes, level 20 is good. However, level 10 is probably what I would say if you're on budget. Level 10 is the close level I would aim to try to raise it to. Level 20 is a bit of a luxury. If you have it, great. If you don't worry too much about it. Similarly, for Constellation, I wouldn't recommend you to go to the second stage. At first stage of the Constellation, you're already able to buff your Kudadini to allow it to be released 4 times in a battle. Now, of course, the shield percentage does get decreased every single time, but still, the fact that you're able to release it more than once is already very good. And just talking about how good Kudadini was at the start of the battle, this kind of allows you to have more sustainability in your combat to release even more ultimate later on, etc. Um, at the second stage of his constellation, you're able to release this every 12 seconds. But you can only do this at most 4 times in a combat. So to me, you don't really need that extra bit of a shortened time interval. So once again, for constellation, I would say Krishna can be built in a budget way and just try to get to the first stage, and that would be enough. Now let's talk about some formation ideas for Krishna. As I mentioned earlier, because Krishna's ultimate protect his backline allies, you definitely want to put Krishna up front. I also mentioned, it's a very good pairing with Sagittarius because this ensures Sagittarius is able to release his ultimate and therefore have this kind of snowball effect of trying to pick off enemy knights one by one. So this is a very good combo. In fact, Krishna, for me, the best formation that Krishna can be used in is probably all fire formation. So you use all five fire knights. Um, this is a very good formation because you get the highest bonus possible at 25%. So that's very good. There's a lot of synergy here between your various different characters as well. So as I mentioned, Krishna would try to protect your um, knights for them to be able to launch their ultimate successfully without being killed off first. So that's very important for Sagittarius. What this means is Sagittarius will hopefully be able to kill off an enemy knight straight away. Then what happens is that for Leo's ability, whenever a knight has been killed off, he will be able to boost your entire team's attacking points. And then therefore your Leo is now buffed. Leo's ultimate will then be released and then kind of do more damage to the entire, well, not to entire, but to three of the enemy knights. Now, hopefully, Sagittarius have already killed off one person, Leo's ultimate would then weaken them even further. Sagittarius can then pick off the next one because the enemy knight is no longer at full health, and hopefully even easier for Sagittarius to pick off. At the same time, Krishna's ultimate will be able to buff both Sagittarius and Leo even further. So hopefully we'll be able to both protect them and also give them this attacking boost to try to wipe out the enemy even further. Aris Mu is just a very good character by default, and you kind of need the protector up front to defend your team. So this is already a very good formation, and in fact, this is a formation that you can even see even nowadays in the Chinese version of the game. So think about Chinese version of the game is like 1 year uh, in front of us, and this team can still be played there. That basically just demonstrates how good this is. Now, what you may also want to know is that I believe from stage 26 onwards, you are required to bring two lineups to all of your map battles, etc. So even if you don't want to have this for your first one, because to level up five fire knights at once can be quite expensive. However, even at low level, this is a very good choice for your second team. So definitely worth considering here. Now let's also talk about Krishna, what if you have certain enemy knights and you want to use Krishna as a way to counter them? The good examples that of knights that Krishna can counter would be Aquarius Camus, Ptolemy, and also Virgo Sugar. The reason is all three of them actually release a skill at the start of the game that is able to, effectively either damage you or freeze you in the case of Aquarius Camus. However, Krishna also released a skill at the start of the game. So, effectively trying to neutralize your opponent's starting ability. I haven't fully tested all of the orders, but as I have seen right now, I know Krishna seems to be faster than Aquarius Camus, so you're able to pull up your Kudini shield before you are frozen. So that's pretty useful. So even though you will still be frozen, but at least you have a shield now to protect yourself for those few seconds of the start of the game. For Virgo Shun, I haven't really tested whether which skill will be released, and similarly for Ptolemy, I haven't really fully tested yet. In the future, there's another character which is Sagittarius Seiya, a very meta character, tier 0 straight away. He also has this starting ability which kind of knock everyone down. Um, he unfortunately does release his skill before Krishna, from what I've seen in the Chinese version of the game. So that's one thing to note of. So Krishna is kind of countered by him. But even though Krishna is countered, for the likes of Sagittarius Seiya or Virgo Shun, etc., they do enough damage to your entire team. But even if they do that, at least your Kundalini will be up. So kind of, even though your character is at lower health, at least you wouldn't be killed off straight away because you still have Kundalini to protect you for a few seconds. So I would say Krishna is a pretty good counter pick. when you see the opponent having a Cross Camus, Ferguson, or Patoni, etc. Finally, let's review Krishna and talk about whether he's worth investing. Krishna, in my eyes, is a very good character. His Crudadini is a very unique game mechanics that even in the future when new characters are released, is still pretty unique and worth considering bringing into a battle. He effectively allows your character to release their first ultimate, and that can change the outcome of the battle straight away. So definitely a very useful character to have, as it just open up a possibility for you to perhaps win a battle that you wouldn't be able to do beforehand. If you are on budget, I would suggest you at least get 2 copies because you are able to redeem 2 copies at a cost of only 30 corals, so that's pretty cheap. If you look at normally a gold knight would cost 60 corals, so to be effectively getting them at half price is very good. So definitely get at least 2 copies. If you manage to get lucky or actually put some money into it, I would actually suggest you getting 4 copies of Krishna. 4 copies of Krishna will allow you to power him up all the way to level 10 star rating. And as Kudadini is kind of scaled off, the shield is scaled off on the amount of HP that Krishna have. You do kind of need Krishna to be at a high level just to make it even worthwhile to have Kudadini up. So, if possible, try to get 4 copies, but as a minimum, definitely get 2 copies. Um, Now, Krishna can be obtained by Golden Shields. Golden Shields normally used for marinas. And in terms of future marinas, Krishna is definitely the top 3 in my opinion. So I wouldn't suggest you conserve too much Golden Shield for this. If you have seen my previous video on the 5 tips about this game, you have noticed for me talking about never waste shields. Waste items that you can carry over, such as Golden Shield, and that's still the case here because effectively what you want to do is towards the end, you want to use up all of your coral fragments for Krishna's fragments. So, for example, here I have 19 fragments left. I need 41 to be able to redeem Krishna. Um, I already have 10 corals, so basically that means I can already get 10 copies, so I need another 31 corals here. I wouldn't just kind of, use my golden shield 31 times because whenever I use a golden shield there's a chance I could get another fragment. So what I will probably do is I'll just use it 20 times to see how many additional fragments I will have obtained, and then for the remaining ones I'll just use golden shield one by one, just so that I'll have just enough for me to redeem a copy of Krishna and not waste any units of golden shield. So that's something important to note of. However, as I mentioned, Krishna is definitely among the top for in terms of the marinas that you can get with Golden Shield. So definitely to suggest you to invest if possible. Just for those who are curious, the other 2 marina that I think is worth investing in will be Seahorse Bayern, who I already made a video in my channel. So if you want to check out his skills, definitely take a look there to see whether you want to conserve Golden Shield for him. The other character will be Kraken Isaac. Kraken Isaac is a bit more unique. He is very popular in kind of like this freeze formation alongside with Aquarius Huga and Aquarius Camus. So you kind of need all 3 characters in order to utilize Kraken Isaac effectively. So he's a bit more on the borderline depending on whether you want to build up this freezing formation. But definitely, Krishna, very good character, good marina. I would suggest you don't waste any golden shells, but do try to grab as many copies as possible.